Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. This is our Tuesday night live show that we generally try to do and try to adhere to that schedule. But sometimes things do come up, so we cannot do it. But we are doing it tonight. We did it last night because of the breaking news in regards to the Bryan Kohberger plea that was announced, or at least confirmed, that he was going to enter a plea of guilty to 4 counts of murder and 1 count of burglary in regards to the death of the 4 college students there in Moscow, Idaho, back in November of 2022. And then today, it became official. We got the order here. It says, notice is given that the above entitled case, July 2nd, 2025 at 11 a.m., Judge Stephen Hippler. There you go. What did Judge Hippler also do today? Judge Hippler also signed an order approving pool still photography tomorrow for the change of plea hearing that is scheduled for July 2nd. And a live stream of the proceedings will be provided by the court on its media streaming outlet. We will bring it to you live, so tune in here at Crime Talk. All right. And therefore, various media requests, outlets to independently video the recording of the proceedings are denied, the judge said. But to ensure that quality still images are available for the hearing, the court will permit a pooled still photographer to be present at the hearing, and the Associated Press have been given the first to request still photography access. It will be permitted to provide such coverage as a pooled media source. The permission to provide such coverage is contingent upon the AP agreeing to act as the pooled resource for such photographs for all media entities, and the photographer may only take photos from the location within the courtroom assigned to them by court personnel. Photographs may not be taken of any victims or members of any family members of the victims inside the courthouse. So there you go. There you go. Good question, Northwest. Will Bryan Kohberger be in orange? I sure hope so. He is pleading guilty. He shouldn't get to wear his suit. There is no media that's going to, be negative towards him for the potential jury pool. So let's see if he shows up in his little orange suit tomorrow. More than likely, he will be in the orange suit. I hope so. He's pleading guilty to quadruple murder. He can wear the attire of a quadruple murderer because he will be guilty. Judgment of conviction will enter, ladies and gentlemen, 2.5 years later. So obviously we talked about this last night. We talked about it today in our show. So if you haven't watched today's show, go check it out. But what we're going to do, just like we did yesterday, we're going to open the call-in number, usually reserved for our Patreon members, but we are going to do it. Now you got to remember one rule, you got to talk into the phone. Don't use your computer because there's a delay over the internet and we'll have a very awkward sounding conversation. And here's the thing. I want to hear first priority of people that are upset that Bryan Kohberger is taking a plea, whether it's because you think it should go to trial and he could potentially get the death penalty, or whether you think he's innocent. And if you really truly believe that he is innocent, because I know there's a lot of people out there that I think they refer to themselves as pro-Kohbergers that could believe almost anything. And I've been watching this. I've been watching this a lot lately. Okay. And I frankly think it's a little disturbing. So, we watched the Karen Reed trial and I was wrong. I admit it. I thought she was going to be convicted of something more than DUI. Probably not the second-degree murder, but I thought she was going to get convicted of the reckless manslaughter because I truly believe she was the one driving. I mean, let's face it, nobody backs up at 29 miles an hour. She did it. That's my opinion. She was found not guilty. I wish her well. I'm not going to dwell on it. But that was a weird little cabal of people that Like, I've never seen anything that intense for a defendant. Never. I mean, yes, normally you get, the guy, the Luigi Mangionis, you get the fan clubs, you get the women like, oh my God, the Chris Watts, oh my God, you're so cute. I want to be with you, even though you killed your wife and 2 children, right? I'll never understand that either. I will not. That is not normal behavior to say, I want to spend the rest of my life. I want to be in a relationship with somebody that's going to prison for the rest of their life. They'll never be able to consummate a relationship. It makes no sense. But then the Karen Reed thing like took everything to a new level. And for a female, it was even more bizarre. And what I think is even more interesting is like all the supporters are basically like, yeah, we're done with you. See ya. Bye. There's no like big, we did it party. We got a few bucks left over. Let's refund that to the people. Nothing. Weird. And let me describe how I describe what's going to take place for the people that were so pro Kohberger. And I wasn't anti Kohberger. We always gave him the presumption of innocence, but I said, he's got some problems. It's called DNA. And that was the problem. And people are like, oh, you can't rely on that. That doesn't mean anything. I read about DNA once, and I told you that it doesn't mean anything. And just because it's there in low quantities doesn't mean that it means anything. And okay, you've never, and I'm not disparaging people. People are very smart on this stuff, right? They study it all the time. But some of the, and I'm just going to say it, cockamamie stories that people were believing. Like, people, come on. If you ever want to be on a jury of your peers, you have to be able to look at the evidence objectively with neither passion nor prejudice and say, yeah, I can see why that would be a bad fact for the defense. Oh, I can see that's a good fact for the defendant. That one. But is that going to be enough? I don't know. If we lined them up, we got a lot of these bad facts, good facts, right? And even in the Kohberger, even those documentaries, the local defense attorneys are like, oh yeah, they're just trying to get a, take death off the table. Doesn't look good. I mean, it's just practical stuff. I cannot think of the last time, maybe somebody can help me out, find it. When was the last time somebody was charged with a death penalty case? And they were going to seek the death penalty, and the prosecution, they were acquitted. Didn't even get to the death penalty. They were acquitted. I can only think of one, but he was then found guilty of second-degree murder, and they bitched him, and he got 96 years on the habitual criminal counts. So I don't know. It's just a weird thing going on in the whole criminal defense world, or in the whole true crime realm. And I hate to say it, and because, like I said, I was scrolling through X, right? And literally, these people are like, yeah, the Karen Reed grift is over. We got to find a new trial to move on to. Oh yeah, Kohberger, he's innocent. There's so much doubt there. And I'm like, who are these people? Like, have they looked at anything in this case? Okay. Let's face it. The defense is going to claim that they won because he's not getting the death penalty. That was their only goal, ladies and gentlemen. This was never about getting an acquittal. And I know this may come as a shock and a surprise to you, but the goal was to get life. They got it. They did a good job. They will be able to tell their client. That was their client's goal, right? There wouldn't be a plea bargain unless Bryan Kohberger said, go to them and tell them that I will plead guilty if you take death off the table. And guess what? He did that because he thought he was going to be convicted. All right? He did that. The defense went to the prosecution and said, listen, we've gone through all these motions. We've lost everything. The judge struck down our alternate suspect motion and denied our motion to continue because the goal was for this to never go to trial. I've talked about this on my show. I can't talk about it how many times. And it wasn't because they're out hunting the real killer. It was because they knew they didn't have great facts. I know. I'm a defense attorney. I've done it myself. If we don't go to trial, that means nothing bad can happen. Okay? And I hate to say I called it, but on this Kohberger thing, I've been right on just about everything, if not everything, that there was no way they were going to get the alternate suspect in because there's only one person that committed the crime, and it's Bryan Kohberger. And tomorrow, all the people that are like, oh, Bryan Kohberger is innocent. It reminds me of the situation where the parents come and hire me, and I have to explain to them they're the client, or they're not the client. Their child is. And I will tell you as much or as little as they want me to, but the client's is the client, and the attorney-client relationship relates with them. And then they, I can't tell them what's going on with the case. Just, see you in court. And then they, kid wants to accept a plea deal. Parents are like, what? We believed him when he said he didn't do it. And just kind of look at him. Well, man, there's nothing I can't really talk about that. But you're welcome to come into court, and hear the plea agreement, hear the plea, because I don't have permission to talk to you about the case, but, see you there, right? That's the way kind of the Kohberger, all the people are like, oh my God, he's innocent, he's innocent, he's innocent. No, nobody goes death unless they know they're going to win. The defendant didn't ask for a plea bargain because he thought he was going to win. He didn't ask for the plea bargain for life because he didn't, he thought there was no possibility that he was going to get death. Of course there was a real possibility. Now, could there have been one juror that hung it up, or maybe more, that said, no, let's give him life, and, we're right where we are? Absolutely. And that's why the prosecution said, you know what? If I can get the same result with certainty or close to that result, and he's going to rot in a little 8x7 cell on a cement bed with a little mattress and a little pillow and a few items in his cell for the rest of his life, and think about every day why he's there. Prosecutor said, yeah, I'm going to do it. Now, yes, some of the family members aren't happy. You're never going to make any of the family members happy. All right. I don't care whose side you're on. Prosecutors got to consult, right? Sometimes I got to tell, the family, your child's taking a plea. Why is he taking a plea? He shouldn't take a plea. He's innocent. Okay. You betcha. And if he were, we'd be going to trial. Okay. And I wouldn't let him be taking a plea. But this is his decision. And this is what the evidence is going to show. Right. And so that's kind of how it feels for all the people that were so pro Burger tomorrow. So, all right. Before we take a call, reminder, we're going to do the call-in line. And only rule is two rules, actually. Two rules. You have to talk on your phone. Don't use your computer. Otherwise, there's a delay. And second, no cussing. This is a family show. All right. You can call me whatever, but be polite about it. I'll let you have your 2 cents worth, and I'll let you respond. But the number 725-228-TALK, 725-8255. Ladies and gentlemen, Frank, who's the first caller? Elisa? Good evening, Elisa. Alyssa. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Good evening, Mr. Reich. I love your show. I'm so grateful for you giving that extra time with how busy you are for this. And you were talking about people who have opinions that they're upset about him not getting the death penalty. I am a very big pro-death penalty person, even though I can be very liberal with other things. The thing that I think, when I think about the death penalty, I understand there are people who see it as a form of ultimate justice. But in my mind, and I have been a victim of many crimes, so my opinion on it is very mixed with emotion and what I would have liked to have happen in my cases. But particularly if Bryan is not, let's say he doesn't get the death penalty, that means I think about Ted Bundy and how he escaped and went on another killing spree.
Yep.
He groomed other people while he was in waiting for his death penalty, like Cody Ackland, and look at Bryan Kohberger, who's another example. If Bryan is allowed to remain living, He could have very well, because this case is very big. There are a lot of people who are obsessed with him. He could be influencing people outside of, we've seen so many different other cases where this has happened. Just because he's in prison does not mean he's not a threat to society still.
No.
The fact that he's alive and able to do that, that's just my personal opinion. And then there's always a chance he could get out. You know, and I don't mean by intentionally letting him out, but what if there was a natural disaster or something, or an earthquake or something, and he gets out? And I, being a person of it's not just, I don't like when people talk about the death penalty and they make it that people who want the death penalties because they think, oh, an eye for an eye, justice for justice. It's so much more than that. To know that that person is still there, they're still out there. You know, I have to deal with night terrors, I have to deal with things like this. It does give a closure. Now, I can't say what people would feel about justice, but it is a closure to know, oh my God, it's done. It's final. It's done. And I think that's what my argument against the death penalty is that and also the fact that he's such an extreme introvert, I really don't think it's going to matter to him that he's in a cell by himself and all that.
Yeah, no.
He's already proven to be that type of person. So those are my arguments on it.
No, well, I understand what you're saying. I mean, the reality of it is that, you know, based upon this plea, he's not going to get the death penalty. Now, guess what? You know, he could wind up like a Dahmer guy and getting shanked on the prison yard by somebody that wants a little notoriety for themselves. Hopefully, and here's the thing, there is no, you know, Ted Bundy type situation, Charles Manson type situation, if people just look at it for what it is. The dude is pleading guilty to quadruple homicide. Okay? Not a good guy.
Right.
Not a good guy. And it should be everybody's book, right? I understand his mom will always love him. His dad will always love him. But he's not a good guy. And I don't care. You say, well, he was so smart. Well, apparently not smart enough because he thought this was a good idea. And the reality of it is he's not a good guy. Nobody should give him any time after that. He's been convicted, send him off to sentencing. And, you know, the newspapers and the story shouldn't be like, oh my God, I want to go interview him. And of course, you're going to still have the Bryan Kohberger fan club, just like we saw with Chris Watts, and people sending money and putting it on his books and saying that he's innocent. And, you know, how can we get money for an attorney to withdraw his guilty plea? I mean, and that's why I hope the judge does such a good plea tomorrow and makes him say on the record what he did. So there's no doubt in everybody's mind that he's the one that did it. Now, I understand on the death penalty.
I agree.
I understand on the death penalty. The death penalty anymore is nothing more than a bargaining chip. I've talked about this before. We don't have the death penalty anymore in the state of Colorado. But if they thought they were going death, you'd oftentimes be like, all right, you know, let's negotiate. You know, my client will take life without parole if you take death off the table. That was the common plea it was, right? The one case I had, they said they were going to go death. We talked him out of it, but we still got to go to trial because, like, okay, you're not going death. Let's go. You know, there's nothing to, you know, see if there's appellate issues that we can create a trial. That was it. So, you know, I some people like it. Some people don't like the death penalty. You know, yes, it's about retribution. It is. And I understand the arguments on both sides. We don't want the state taking people's lives, you know, about all that type of stuff. I get that. But it is also a valid tool. Like if you get life without the possibility of parole for one murder, right? So what are you supposed to do when you get 2, 3, 4, and you start stacking up some real bodies? And I mean, I think that's the issue that people have to take question with is, okay, you get a volume discount on murder if there's no death penalty. And so, I I mean, I don't know whether you like it. Some people don't like it. They think it's morally wrong. I get that. You can agree with it. There are things I don't like morally, but it's the law. And there's laws that I think are stupid, but you got to follow them. At the end of the day, that is the law. And so it's not unconstitutional, unless we're, quartering them by horses, ripping their limbs apart, firing squad, lethal injection. Think you can still do the electric chair. I think the gas chamber is still around in the federal system as well. And so, yeah, I get it. I mean, there's both sides to the argument, but at the end of the day, the state's got to make up their mind what they want to do. And this particular case, the state's going for certainty, but guess what? Bryan Kohberger is the one that had to accept it. And nobody pleads guilty to 4 murder counts if you didn't do it. Bottom line.
I agree. I think I love how you always do talk about the death penalty being such an important tool. It really is, because a lot of families were able to recover their loved ones' remains. They were able to get answers or some sort of something that it's a bargaining tool. And I couldn't imagine like when Gavin Newsom converted all of the death penalty, the people on death row in California, to life without parole instead. And what you have to go through just to get the death penalty on the table, for the families to go through all that. And he just wipes it out, like takes it all away. And so I understand what
our legislature took it away from us.
Yeah.
Our legislature took it away. And didn't even let it have a vote to the people.
We voted twice to keep it, and Gavin still got rid of it.
I know.
It's crazy. But I do have a question for you on this, because I don't know where this would fall. My other concern about him not getting the death penalty is that he not make any money, royalties, or anything off of telling his story or interviews and whatnot, writing books.
Lots of states, and I'm not going to say that I know what Idaho is, but most states have statutes that don't allow people, convicted of murder to profit off of that. If not, there may still be a civil suit, if one was filed against Kohberger, just in case. Go see them. Statute of limitations may have run. That may not have been a big issue, but one way or the other, I don't think he'll ever get a penny out of it. I mean, what's there to write a book about?
Like Jodi. Well, Jodi Arias sells her artwork and does things like that. And, like they shouldn't be able to profit off of, anything in that way. But, that's just my personal opinion. But I really enjoy Mr. Rice. You are amazing.
Call me Scott.
Especially, I can't imagine how much, how much time and going into your career, and then you give us this time as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you much. I appreciate the call.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
All right. You take care.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Let's go to another caller. Frank, the hardest working man in show business, says we got another one queued up here. Hello. You're on the air. You're with Scott.
Hi. This is Sarah. So just on the last comment, I did look up in Idaho, and they don't have the son of Sam law, which basically means that they can, in fact, write books and do interviews and things like that. So
yeah,
he could potentially profit, but hopefully it would all go towards some sort of restitution if the judge applies that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he's not going to live a rich lifestyle, and I just hope he doesn't have the Bryan Kohberger fan club that's going to, oh my God, he's so cute and handsome. I don't understand how he can do it. I mean, it's like, come on.
It's ridiculous. One of the things that I wanted to say is, while I understand where the Gonzaleses are coming from, I agree that this is the best decision for everyone. Obviously, it takes out all of the years of appeals, if he does get a guilty plea and they do give him the death penalty, we're talking like they'll never see that anyway because of years and years of appeals. But I do think this is good for the family. But moreover, I think that we're overlooking two people in this scenario, and that's the two living roommates who were also victims of Bryan Kohberger. And this gives them the ability not to have to get up on that stand, relive all that trauma. It gives them closure so they can move forward in their life and work on healing from an unspeakable trauma that they are facing in their life. And so all in all, that's what I'm focusing on is, you know, he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life, period. And we spare those two girls this whole process.
Listen, I get it. You know, if that was my kid that was slaughtered in that room, you know, I would want, just give me 2 minutes with the guy, right? And I would take care of it.
Yeah.
I would bring my, you know, K-bar that I've had since the summer of 1986 when I went to Marine Corps boot camp. And yes, Bryan Kohberger, I still have it.
Service.
I haven't lost mine in 37 years, Mr. Kohberger.
Right.
And so, but I get it. And look, the DAs are trying to be pragmatic here. They're saying, we believe we have a strong case. We're going to get a conviction. Obviously, Kohberger thought they have a strong case, and it's pretty likely that he would get death. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone to the prosecutor and said, we'll take it, right? We'll take it if you offer it.
Absolutely.
And so, yes, there's lots of things. You get the finality of a guilty plea. You take away the appeals that will take the next 35 years, the post-conviction that will take, you know, years and years within that 30 to 35 years, the habeas petitions, the petition for this, the petition for that. And every time something like that happens, guess what? That family's going to get a letter. They're going to get an email saying, here's what's going on. We're going to have another hearing on it. The judge has granted a hearing to see if his attorney was ineffective, right? And it's going to go on for the next 30 years. I get the family. They want him dead. There's every reason justifiable potentially be dead if a jury convicted him of, and that was the appropriate sentence. I get that. My heart goes out to the family. I would not wish losing a child on anyone. I have 2 kids. Couldn't imagine, right?
Right.
Couldn't imagine losing your child. Even I get, you know, I mean, stepkids, you just couldn't imagine, right? And so the reality of it is,
but if it were my, sorry, I was just going to say that if it were my daughter that was one of the living roommates, I would be so thankful for this ending.
Yes, absolutely. And think about it. This kind of goes back to my point earlier. All the people that were bashing these roommates, oh, they're guilty of something. They should be charged with something. These young ladies have been vindicated because Kohberger knew they were going to come in and testify. And with all the other evidence, those girls were going to come in. And whether some were part of all their testimony were to come in that was proffered in the motions hearing, he believed it was going to be damning. And so these girls, these witnesses, right? They've been vindicated.
They're vindicated.
That they were correct.
And they
had nothing to do with it.
Trauma.
They had nothing to do with it. And all of the wackadoos out there that were making outlandish allegations with no basis in fact to support it at all were saying that these girls were involved. They should be charged. They were part of a conspiracy. Those individuals need to apologize to those young ladies and admit that they were wrong, right? And because it's one thing to say, oh, I think this person's guilty, right? Like that's accused of a trial. But to go out and accuse people that have been charged with nothing and are a witness and they've been accused of committing a crime and you don't have a scintilla of evidence other than, well, I just think I would have called the police. No. And the one thing I have learned in all my years of practicing criminal defense, sometimes weird stuff goes on and people react differently. They freeze. I mean, that's like saying, well, if somebody sexually assaulted somebody, they should immediately pick up the phone and call the police. And we all know that's not true. And for people to say, well, I would have done it this way. And, those girls, like I said, the two roommates, they've been vindicated as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
And the
100%.
people that ran their names through the mud should really be, for lack of a better term, I don't want to say outed or doxxed, but they should say, you know what? Gee, I guess I got a little over my skis on this one here. And my ridiculous theories were wrong. And don't get me wrong, everybody loves a good conspiracy. All right. Who doesn't?
But that was crazy.
But have some facts to back it up. Like I said, I've said all along, and people are like, oh, Scott, you're not a very good defense attorney. You don't believe every wackadoo story that's out there on the internet. No, because I'd like to think I have some credibility and I'm not going to lose it because I'm going to go on every little tangent that everybody goes down until I see the evidence and back it up. And everybody knows there's only two ways or one way to keep a secret in a conspiracy of two or more people, but that everybody else is dead but one. There's no way. And so I just, these people that say, oh, there was a conspiracy of 30, 40 people and they all did that. Bull.
Right.
And they can weave their little threads to, get their clickbait. It just drives me bonkers. And
it's fine. It's fine if people want to say, well, I would have handled it differently. Like I would have called 911, whatever. I mean, but on the other hand, these are young girls in a very small college where nothing like this has ever occurred. So they were terrified. They froze. They didn't know what the heck was going on. I mean, it's appropriate the way they responded. And some people may not think that, and a lot of people will disagree with that. But I still think that considering everything that they went through, there is no fault or blame or anything on them. And even if they were able to call 911, there was no saving the roommates. But
yeah, oh yeah, they were
beyond that,
they were asleep.
I don't hold them responsible for a darn thing.
They were asleep. Hey, here's what we got a guy on hold that says that this is nothing but a typical frame job by the prosecution. So I want to hear what Franklin has to say. Thank you for your call.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is this Franklin? No. Okay, who's next? Patty, are you there?
Yes, hello.
How are you?
Hello. Yes, I'm here. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
Three things. First of all, thank you for your show, for your education of us, and for your time. Secondly,
well, thank you.
What determines if a prisoner goes to solitary confinement or ends up in the general prison population? And third, have you ever had a client that you could not stomach representing? And how do you feel like you would have been able to represent Bryan Kohberger?
Okay, sure. I'll start with
all the evidence started coming out.
Sure. Start with the last one first. Yeah, I could have represented Bryan Kohberger. I could have represented, Lori Vallow. I could have represented Karen Reed. Everybody's entitled to a defense. Everybody's entitled to defense counsel to zealously represent them through the case. Everybody, no matter how bad, and so, yeah, and Ann Taylor was doing her job. Okay. Whether when she was a public defender or court-appointed counsel, when she left the public defender's office, the reality of it is she was doing her job. She did her job, which was to hopefully take death off the table for Bryan Kohberger. That was his goal. That was her goal as well. She achieved that goal. She should be commended for that. All right. The prosecution should be commended. The prosecution should be commended for making a case where Bryan Kohberger came groveling to the prosecution to say, pretty please, may I plead guilty to everything and go to prison for the rest of my life if you promise not to kill me? So that's good for them.
Yes.
Okay. Question.
Yes, this one worked out really well. But
Yep.
But what if she would have gotten him off somehow by in some stretch of the imagination with the overwhelming evidence? What if he would have walked free when we all knew he did it?
Well, there are people that would probably be very upset and shocked by it. But at the end of the day, if the jury, assuming they follow their oath and looked at the evidence and say they just didn't prove it, that's the way the system works. It really does. Not guilty verdicts are taking place in every state, in courtrooms throughout the country on a daily basis. That is the way the process works. And you don't get to lower the standard of proof. You don't get to say, well, it's a really bad crime, so the standard of proof is lower. And that's the way the system works. Remember, the founding fathers set this system up. To be fair, and there's going to be trials where people should have been convicted and people aren't going to like it. But guess what? Those jurors are from the community. They have to go back to the community. They got to go stand at the line at the grocery store, stand in line at the coffee shop or the butcher or wherever. And, that's part of the thing. Can they look, at the other people out there or say, hopefully nobody should, you can call jurors, think they got it wrong, right? You can say that. But you can't, you shouldn't go around intimidating jurors if they got it wrong as far as your belief goes. But that's the way the system works. Not guilty verdicts are,
I understand.
They're routine.
I know. In theory, it all is perfect. It makes sense, and there should be one standard for everything. But the trouble is when you are close enough to watch something unfold and see a horrendous, gruesome, horrible crime take place. And then, I realize this may be why they took the plea. Just the even possibility of letting him go free would have been worse, much worse than anything else.
But remember, our system of justice is founded upon the premise that it's better to let 10 guilty men go free than to convict somebody that's innocent. Right? That's our premise. That's what we operate under. And obviously, I believe the prosecution was going to get a conviction. Were they going to get the death penalty on Kohberger? I don't know. There could have been someone saying, no, I found enough to think he's got some redeeming quality of some value, right? Because they can decide on anything. And, the prosecution was weighing that when they said, yeah, we'll let you do this. But the beautiful thing is the certainty that's there. It's over. Yeah. And yes, the family wants vengeance. I get it, but it's over. And now they can move on. I saw one of the family's comments today was, we're not happy, but at least we don't have to go through this. It's going to be over. It's going to be over real soon.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And yes, if I had clients that I could not stand, absolutely. Have I had clients get a not guilty verdict that I could not stand? Yes. Oh. I had a client once. This woman was so crazy. And she's literally in trial. We go through trial. I think things are going all right. But she's so unlikable. I'm thinking jury just doesn't like her. I mean, she's just animated. She's at the thing. She's talking in my ear the whole time. I'm literally telling her to shut up and let me do my job. And we're closing arguments. And I got up. Prosecution did their first closing. I did mine closing, and the prosecutor gets back up for a final closing. And my clients are like, I'm leaving. She gave a better closing than you. You suck. I'm getting out of here. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, right. And I'm like, sit down, shut up, smile for the jury, right? Jury comes back not guilty. Okay. And she's like, oh my God, I love you. I'm like, no. I heard what you said. Good luck. Hope I never see you again. Literally, true story. About a year later, she gets in trouble again. New attorney calls me up, says, hey, big, fraud case going on. she really wants you as her attorney. And, would you come on? And I said, the retainer is $1 million. And the other attorney kind of chuckled and said, oh, yeah, that's really funny. But it's like, well, how much do you really need? I said, no, the retainer is $1 million because she was a horrible client. It is not worth any amount of money to represent this person again. And I would need that $1 million to get a new staff because she was so rude to my staff, and I will never do that again. And didn't represent her. So yes, I've had clients that I've gotten good results for that I could not stand. Did we lose you?
Okay. No, the prison population question.
General population.
Solitary, yeah. Solitary versus general population.
Yeah.
What affects that?
It's basically when you get out, how much you get out every day. If you're in solitary or, protective custody, you maybe only get a couple hours a day out of your cell every day. General population, you can get out, they go to exercise, they can, go to chow, all that type of stuff. Protective custody, I wouldn't want to do that. I had a guy that was a client once at ADX for 12 years. And I think it affected him, that isolation. I mean, there's been studies about that. And ADX isn't total isolation. They got their own TV in there and, they could do their legal work and all that type of stuff. But I wouldn't want to do that. Could you imagine basically living in something the size of most people's bathroom every day? Every day.
I'm sorry. What I meant was what determines if you're in solitary versus
general population?
General.
Well,
yes.
Normally, if the Department of Corrections believe that, there's some risk for you, like I know here, we had the Aurora Theater shooter case, right? I think he killed 12 people, got convicted. They went death. They didn't get death. They moved him to Pennsylvania because they were concerned about him being a high profile defendant and getting shanked, right? So he can go somewhere else, not the publicity, so to speak, and maybe he can be in general population. Most people, they try to get to general population unless somebody checks themselves in and says, hey, I need to go to protective custody. And then, of course, they're, referred to as a bitch, excuse my French, for checking themselves into protective custody. And that's usually because the charge that you've got, or, there's some beef on the yard. This is from my clients telling me this stuff, not that I've ever been there. So, but yeah, if you check yourself into protective custody, sometimes they're like, hey, what's your charge? Oh, you're in for like a sex offense. Well, you know what they do to child molesters, chomos, they beat them up. They beat them up if they get a chance. That's why they're usually in their own pods. So it just depends. They have various rules, guidelines, but basically it's a safety issue.
Very enlightening. Thank you.
Sure. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for calling. All right. Is it Franklin? No. I guess Franklin, who's on there saying he's on hold, going to tell me how it's all set up. And the prosecution set up Kohberger and going to tell me how it is. Didn't call in. All right. Maybe this is Franklin. Is this Franklin?
Hello.
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 Is this Tom? Can you hear me? You have to talk into the phone, not your computer.
Hello, this is Carmela.
Okay, how are you?
You talking to me, Carmelo?
Yes. You're on delay.
Carmela.
You need to talk into your phone and don't use a computer.
I'm on my phone. I don't know if you are speaking with me or someone else.
I'm speaking with you. Go ahead.
Okay.
All right. Hold on 1 second. Franklin, hold on. Quick update, Carmel. Franklin says, Scott, I'll be calling in tomorrow to explain how us pro-burgers think. I've decided your chat is being very rude to me and not worth dealing with. What? I'm giving you, Franklin, the chance to call in and talk with me directly. Tell me why it is all a big setup, and why is Bryan Kohberger pleading guilty if he isn't? Okay, I apologize. Go ahead. It's your floor.
It's okay. First, I'd like to say thank you. I have utmost respect for you, beyond respect. You are amazing. I only listen to you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm calling. Please forgive me. My throat. I've been sick, so it's hard to talk. But I really wanted to take this minute to talk about Bryan Kohberger's case.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
started trying with Gonzalez's father and that family. I feel so bad for them and all the families. I don't know, maybe you can clarify this. If he does take this plea, although I'm against it, I think it should go to trial. If he takes this plea, can part of that be where he explains exactly the reason he thinks in his warped, sick, evil mind he did that? Who or why? Like, did he talk them, any of that, or does he not have to?
The judge may ask him during the factual basis of the plea, tell me in your own words what you did and why. Okay. But I would hope that the prosecutors would have asked that as a condition of any plea bargain in this particular case. Okay. So whether it comes out at the hearing tomorrow or at a separate sentencing hearing, or just after the case is done based upon conversations, we're going to find out. My guess is more than likely, Bryan Kohberger was awkward with girls. He had a little teeny weeny, and this was his, thing that he was doing. That's my guess.
Incel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was afraid of girls.
To be an incel.
He was totally afraid of girls.
And his attorney said he is afraid of girls. You're right. And his attorney said, I believe he's innocent. Not once, many a times. She put the I in there, not us as a team. I believe.
She was being an attorney.
Allowing this to go through?
She was being an attorney.
Excuse me?
She was being an attorney.
Okay. All right. Now, would the families be allowed to get up and share how they feel, what they think? Are they going to have the opportunity to do so?
At the sentencing hearing, they'll be able to say things. Now, remember, the victim's family, and I've been to lots of sentencings, and, particularly on homicides, they'll start pointing and you're a horrible person, blah, 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 to the defendant, all that kind of stuff in homicide cases. Okay. But it's like all things. Court is supposed to be dignified. It's supposed to be, some civility in the courtroom and,
Absolutely.
Some decorum where they can say, you've taken away, my future, my life. I can't live without my child. It breaks my heart every day. Those types of things are totally appropriate. To say, you're, scumbag and all that stuff, usually not appropriate. Okay. Everybody knows what they're thinking, but it's court. And just like
put your picture next to evil.
Yeah. And just like the defendant doesn't get to talk directly, you're supposed to talk to the judge. That's who the statement is to. It's the judge. You're not supposed to address the defendant directly, just like the defendant's not supposed to, talk to the family directly. It's a statement to the court. So that's what everybody needs to realize. And frankly, I get a couple of the families have said they're not happy, right? I get that. I get it. I'm not going to, but you still got to take the high road, be classier than the guy that's, across the courtroom that's going to prison for the rest of his life.
Absolutely.
That would be my
yes.
advice.
I have my PhD, and I created court consultations in New York and did many developed programs. I say God help me throughout all New York State and internationally. When I've seen some really horrible things, but this is appalling that the judge would do this.
Well, it's not up to the judge. This is the prosecutor's decision. The judge is not involved in plea negotiations. I don't think the judge has any authority to say, I'm not going to, I can't take this plea or reject it. It's a plea bargain. The plea bargain is between the defendant and the prosecution. The judge, does the sentencing. So this is the prosecution's decision.
Okay.
But like I said, this is every side is going to take their victory lap. The defense is going to say, we took death off we got death off the table. We saved our client's life. That's what death penalty attorneys do. Usually death penalty attorneys don't have very good facts to work with. Otherwise it wouldn't be a death penalty case, right? Prosecution's going to say,
yes, absolutely.
Prosecution's going to say, we had such an overwhelming case. He knew he was going to be convicted, and he believed there was a very good likelihood that he was going to be sentenced to death. And then he came to us and groveled for life in prison. Okay? They're all going to take their victory laps. Listen, it's a good deal when everybody on both sides is not happy. That's a sign of a good deal, good negotiations took place.
Absolutely.
And listen, you're never going to make everybody happy, particularly on a case like this. But the reality of it is everybody won in this particular case. Okay. Like I said, you want justice, don't go to the courthouse. You're not going to find it because there's always going to be somebody going away unhappy. But this case, Kohberger gets what he wants. He doesn't get to die, even though he's going to admit to taking 4 lives, 4 young people's lives that, as far as we know, never did anything wrong to Bryan Kohberger to fault him. So hopefully we'll find out if this was just a murder of because he wanted to try it, because he wanted to do it, right? Because he was infatuated, because whatever reason, maybe the guy's got erectile dysfunction or something, or afraid of girls. I mean, I don't know. It has to do something with the girls. I would bet you the biggest steak dinner that I could find that it has something to do with he got rejected, probably unbeknownst to them, by a girl, one of them. Who knows?
Absolutely. Okay, I have one more thing on my mind.
Okay, go ahead.
In school, I know he followed all the murderers and he wanted to know what's going on. He's going to have a huge prison classroom to do his work. Do you think that him being able to do that, like he's going to be interviewing people, doing things, triggering his...
Sure. Who knows? Maybe someone will even give him his PhD if he comes up with enough. I mean, talk about the ultimate study, right? He's just got to be able to try to keep his objectivity when he's in there, to make sure it's truly the scientific method, right? To test his theories. You betcha. He may do that. He may write a little book or something. Why people kill.
He can't profit, correct? Can he profit from that or no?
Somebody said, I think it would go towards any restitution if he received any money. And, hopefully, I don't know what the statute of limitations is for Idaho for an intentional tort like in Idaho, but hopefully somebody filed a lawsuit, put it in abeyance while this is on, so that if he ever make a penny, they'll get it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. You are so amazing. I thank you. Utmost respect to you, the way you communicate with us. You are delivering the time you take out of your busy day representing your clients.
Well,
I learned so much from you, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Frankie,
much.
be quiet. He's the best. Keep your mouth quiet. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much for your call. We got a call coming in from Belgium. All right, let's do this. Who's calling from Belgium?
Hello. Hi, I'm a big fan.
Well, thanks.
So I have a few questions. The first was I was very confused when the defense counsel stood in silence on the plea. The second would be there's a case in New York around Caitlin Conley and Mary Yoder, and she's clearly guilty, okay? I mean, she definitely did the crime, but she was acquitted because of the warrant around her cell phone on the appeal. So I guess she was overturned, right?
Okay. Yep. Reversed.
And I kept thinking about the Kohberger case and how they obtained the DNA. Because again, I think he's guilty. Okay, this is not like some conspiracy. He did it. It's clear, right?
I agree. But they raised some interesting legal issues.
Do they have a case without that sheet? What? Do they have a case without that sheet? And did they get the DNA properly? And how do, like, I love your thoughts on that.
Sure.
And I guess the final thing was, when it comes to the death penalty, because I tend to lean conservative, but when it comes to the death penalty, I keep seeing all these traumas around the accused, right? Because, like, you know, you have all the appeals, and the victim's family have to go to all these appeals when there's a death penalty, and it takes forever, right? Whereas if the person's sentenced to life in prison, they can kind of move on with their lives, even though they don't get a death. And yes, it's not fair, but life's not fair.
Yeah, no,
those
life
are my
isn't
three
fair.
questions.
Life is not fair. You never get what you want. Never.
Right.
So first question, one, as it relates to Bryan Kohberger standing silent at his plea. He basically, you know, when the court asks them, how do you plead, you know, guilty or not guilty? Normally the defense attorney says, Your Honor, we enter a plea of not guilty, waive any further reading or advisements, ask the matter be set down for a jury trial and motions hearing. That's it. A defendant, you know, that rule that the court can enter a plea on a defendant's behalf is when they refuse to enter a plea. Usually it's for the defiant defendant there. And that was a little bit of their defiant way to do that. You know, they're going to stand silent. They're not going to say anything. So the court enters. Okay, who cares? The not guilty plea enters. Doesn't matter who did it, the court or him or his attorney, not guilty plea entered. It started a speedy trial clock. I wouldn't read too much of anything into that. Now, yes, I think Bryan Kohberger, there was sufficient evidence for him to be convicted. Were there also several legal issues that were interesting in this particular case? Yes. Did Bryan Kohberger's team do a very good job on the motions? Yes, I know. I've read them several times. I've read them, you know, as they've come in. And I've read both sides, prosecution's motions, responses, and the defense responses. Would they have had a good of case without the DNA? Of course not. DNA, I'm telling you, man, people act like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's just a little bit of DNA right here, right? Oh, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it does.
Not in this case.
Yeah, it does.
It was under the victim's body.
Under the victim's body on a knife sheath. Oh, that you just happened to buy, you know, like 6 months in advance. What a coincidence. And
he looked for it on Amazon afterwards.
Exactly, to replace it.
He's guilty. He definitely did it.
Yeah, right.
He did it. No, I'm not. I'm not buying I'm definitely not buying a Bryan Kohberger.
No, I get it, but it was interesting legal issues. But the judge shot it down. We went through the order when he shot down their motion to suppress. And here's the thing, you know, to have standing in a criminal case to say that evidence was obtained illegally, you have to say it's yours.
That's where I was concerned.
Yeah, you have to say it's yours. He never said the sheath was his.
That's interesting.
And he had no standing because he never said, oh, it's mine. And that was kind of the thing. They're like, well, Judge, they took his, you know, profile from the IgG, right? They had a known sample. Right. Remember, they go in, they do their crime lab stuff. They get the DNA off the button hole. I think it's actually on the inside button here, right here. Okay. Right. So they have this profile. They put it into CODIS, which is the system to search that everybody who has a felony conviction across the United States into that system. No hits. Well, it makes sense. There's no hits because he doesn't have a felony conviction and he's not a sex offender, right?
Exactly.
So then they go to these, you know, genealogical DNA sites, right? To say, hey, can we take a look at this stuff? Now, the FBI has a policy, not a law, not a statute, a policy of we shouldn't use this stuff. Every day. That's my policy. Do I follow that policy every day?
It's a term of service.
No, exactly. And so,
well, no, but it's terms of service. You can violate terms of service on a website without going to jail. It's not actually violating the law.
It's a civil remedy, right? And what are your remedies?
That's right.
But here's the thing. So they get this DNA sample. They develop the genealogical DNA. They find out, it's a guy whose dad, I think it was his dad's DNA they actually linked it to, right? To his, this guy may have a family relative that lives in Pennsylvania, who just coincidentally happens to have a son that goes to college in Pullman, Washington, just a stone's throw away from Moscow, Idaho, right? And he just happens to drive a white Hyundai Elantra. What are the odds, right? So they get an arrest warrant, right? They arrest him, because they develop it and they say, here it is. And then they go get an independent buccal swab, right? It's a 41-1 here. And the judge says there's probable cause to believe this person committed a crime. We would like to have his DNA. It's like getting your fingerprints. You have no expectation of that, but they always get a warrant for it anyway, right? Court can order it.
Right.
They order it. They get his buccal swab. Now they have a known sample. And then they go back to the DNA on, the results on the sheath. And they say, would you look at that? It's a total match, not even a mixture.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I mean, listen, I'm 100%. I'm 100% convinced he's guilty as hell. Okay, I'm 1,000%. I was more concerned about the probable cause to search that second DNA database. Yeah, I was like, boy, that was shady. I looked at that. I was like, where's the probable cause? I don't know how that works, right? Because
they don't
see him go to jail.
They don't need it.
I think he deserves it.
The company gave it up.
What you're saying is they don't need it. They don't need it because he didn't claim ownership of the knife sheath, therefore the DNA. Therefore, they don't need probable cause. Right? Unlike the Mary Yoder case, where it was the defendant's cell phone, where they needed a warrant.
Correct. And so
that seems to be the difference.
Yeah, and understand, it wasn't his DNA that started all this stuff. His DNA sample wasn't in there. It was his dad's, right? And it's all kinds of privacy issues and things like that. But from the legal aspect of it, the law does not recognize that expectation of privacy. And the order was, it has to be a right that they expect privacy, right? It's different from your phone, right? You got your phone, like the Yoder case, right? And I'm not familiar with all the facts of the Yoder case, so I'm just speaking generally.
Yeah, but
this is the Supreme Court has said in Carpenter v. California, I believe is the case, that this is protected under the Fourth Amendment. Okay, think about it.
Right.
The Fourth Amendment started out basically saying, you have a right to be secure from unreasonable searches and seizures in your place, person, and belongings, right?
Correct.
And it used to be people had the big chest
in his place.
Yeah, people had their big chest in their house and they kept their valuables, right? Well, now it's your phone, right? And here's the thing. This is going to be huge because there's a case. I've been litigating this for years now. Finally, the Court of Appeals is starting to understand it, right? So that's
a big problem.
The
problem is they don't understand.
And I think that's the case that I saw. If this is talking about the one about the testimony of the officers, the search of the phone, right? So the police will go and get a warrant. Okay, they'll say, I want to search Scott's phone. The phone identifier is XYZ umpty frats, whatever, right? And they'll say we're looking for something of criminal activity between the dates. We'll just say June 1 to June 30 of 2025. All right. So they get the phone. Yes. They go to the judge and the judge says, probable cause, go search the phone. This is what most people don't know. And I think the courts are finally starting to recognize it. And I've done hearings on it, and people that have been doing this stuff for 20 plus years that have been dumping phones, right? You say, all right, Mr. Forensic Examiner of your phone, you got the phone, you had the search warrant. What do you do before you dump it through your Celebrite system or Gray Key? Well, we confirm that it's the right phone. We look at the serial numbers and it matches. Okay. What do you do to limit the date restriction from June 1 to June 30 of 2025? And they will tell you on the record to your face,
yes,
we ignore it. It means nothing to me because I have to dump the entire phone before I can search it. How is that not a general rummage under the Fourth Amendment, right? And then they say, but after we dump it, Then we have the officer in charge that's looking at it, involved in the case. He goes through the phone and then he limits what's within that time frame, but he still has to look at everything. How is that not
exactly.
rummage? That's no different than the king's men showing up on the doorstep and saying, we heard you said bad things about the king. We're going to come in here and search your place because we don't like you. We're not sure what we're looking for, but we'll know it when we see it. Like I said, that's what they do with phones these days.
And I think you're right. Like when it comes to the phone, I think there is probably some privacy violations, even though, again, this Mariota case, the girl was guilty as hell. She definitely killed her.
I know,
but
you can't obtain the evidence illegally.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you can't obtain the evidence illegally.
It doesn't matter. You want that right to privacy. You don't want to give that up. That's far more important than a single conviction.
Absolutely.
Right? Sorry.
No.
I'm sorry, and I'm sorry about the. I also had the death penalty question because
sure,
I kind of lean conservative, but I've read about prison guards committing suicide, and because they just can't handle putting people to death, right? Things of this nature.
Sure.
Is there an element of just I understand the tool and how it's being used as in the death penalty, but does it make sense to, I don't know, get rid of it? Because I feel like even if Kohberger had kids, and his own family is going to be victims of what he did as well. Not that I feel as bad for them as I do for the victims' families. Of course, they deserve, all of this. They deserve to get their justice. But there's a whole bunch of victims around the defendant that commits a crime like this, and should they be traumatized by the death penalty as well? Some of the victims of the death penalty we don't like, it doesn't really matter to me. I feel like it's all over the place. I just wanted your thoughts on that because I know maybe it's controversial what I said. I'm still learning my opinion more than anything else.
Sure. I mean, I think most people have opinions that evolve over time as it relates to that. And there is a bunch of trauma for everybody involved. I mean, prison guards, they know these people. They've been on, they can probably serve their entire career with somebody on death row. They serve their 20, 25 years of service or what have you. And so, they get to know these people and maybe they've always been nice and respectful to them. Right. But, it's not about, and understand that most things in the criminal law, it's not about whether the person is a good person or a bad person. It's just simply, did what was alleged take place? That's it. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Nowhere in the defense, in the jury instruction is, but he's a really good guy. Right?
Of course, because good people do bad things all the time.
Absolutely.
Right? And they have to be held to the standards of the law. You can't just say, well, he's a good guy, so let's let him off this time.
And then,
because I'll be honest, I felt like that around O.J. Simpson when he was on trial when I was 15. I was like, oh man, I just don't want to see him be found guilty. After the fact, in retrospect, it was like, boy, he was a really bad job. But when
O.J. Simpson was so guilty.
The naked gun. Yeah. What's up?
O.J. Simpson was totally guilty, and the prosecution blew that case.
I totally agree.
Prosecution blew the case. The defense had a great jury, but the prosecution blew that case. And that's what happens normally in cases. I still think Brennan in the Reed case did a great job. I think he did. I
agree with that.
I'm never going to shy away from that. That guy put on a masterclass. I think the public pressure was too overwhelming for the jury to say otherwise. Like, oh, the fighter guilty of DUI. Okay. But we don't think we hit him. Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I saw the cell phone evidence, I was pretty sure that she should have at least gotten a third degree. But, again, I almost feel like, okay, I agree O.J. Simpson was guilty. I'm with you on that. But I don't know if the prosecution could have ever found a jury in that district that would have found him guilty. That's the second part of it. I don't know.
They had a sympathetic jury. They did.
Yes. But if they would have done that trial 100 times, he might have gotten like
Yeah.
80 not guilty. Those people just were angry about something else, and they were trying to make a statement. It wasn't about the trial at all.
Yeah, O.J.
Right?
Simpson, the prosecutor, Marsha Clark, and the other guy, I can't think of his name, Darden. Eric Darden, I think was his name. Darden something. I think it's Eric Darden. Chris Darden. That's right. They blew that case. The Judge Alito, he should go in the judge wall of shame as being one of the worst judges ever. That was a 3-week trial that they turned into a 9-month fiasco. I remember it. I was in law school and I'm listening to it in the car. It was always going on. It just wouldn't end. And they just turned it into a complete fiasco, and they lost it. So
also, the prosecution also had the jury drinking from the fire hydrant, and they really could have simplified that case a lot. And not to mention the big moment. I think Chris Darden didn't get it. He still doesn't ever think that showing the gloves to the jury was a mistake, and it's kind of dumb. But I still think, even with all that, it's possible they keep getting a not guilty simply because of that time and that jury in that area. It was a weird time, almost like the Karen Reed trial, a little bit, not totally, but a little bit.
No. I mean,
because she got the crowd behind her.
You got the crowd behind her, which is weird in and of itself.
That documentary played well for her somehow, even though it was probably
she confessed.
It was terrible advice.
She confessed.
Yeah, she did, and she got away with it. And she got away with it because people somehow like her. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
But it worked. So I don't know. I agree with you on the Karen Reed trial as well, by the way. I just can't. But there's something about the media. So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk too much.
That's all right. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Great call.
Bye-bye.
All right. All right. Who do you have next, Frank? We got 5 more calls. 5 more calls. Oh, wow. All right. Cindy, go ahead.
Cindy Hollenbeck?
Cindy, go ahead. You're on.
Hey. Hi, Scott. How you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
Good. Well, first I wanted to say that I joined the Navy in 1989 and graduated from high school in 86. So I think that we're kind of close in age. So I really connect with this show.
Well, appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I watched a show last night. I watch yours just about every day. And they had 2 defense attorneys and a prosecuting attorney and a prison guard on there. And so obviously they were analyzing this just like you do, except yours is super thorough with all those readings of the case files, which I love. But what I was thinking was, if you remember when, first of all, I'm sorry, I should tell you, I live in Pullman. I can walk to Bryan Kohberger's apartment if I wanted to. And I grew up. Yeah, I lived in Moscow for 20 years. So I'm a local. I was here when all of this happened, and I've been ear to the ground for the whole time. I should probably tell you that. I'm a local.
Okay.
So, yeah, and Bryan Kohberger and I had the same boss at WSU because I worked for the graduate school, if that isn't like a little weird. And they said from the moment he stepped on campus, he was the biggest pain in the you-know-what. And they kind of knew he was going to go downhill. FYI.
Sometimes you can just tell.
Yeah. So, but my question has to do with Steve Gonsalves, because if you remember when this first happened, he seemed to be, well, I won't say seemed, he was the most vocal, came out fighting. And I remember at first he was kind of critical of Moscow PD.
Yep.
And I met Chief Fry. I think the Moscow Police Department did a fabulous job. And what I wanted to say was, after yesterday, which was a big explosion, and he's out now and he's very upset about this. But if you remember, I feel like he softened after a while with the police, and he admitted he was wrong on certain things. So what I'm wondering is that after all of the emotional impact of this dies down, and, I'm wondering, based on all of your experience, human nature and all that, do you think he'll eventually say, okay, this was the right decision?
Yes.
Like, have you seen things like this happen?
Yes. And here's the thing. I mean, like I said, I would not criticize the man. I know he came out. He was not happy with the police early on. He's not happy with this early on. But the man is angry. His daughter was slaughtered brutally for no reason.
Right.
He is angry. I would be livid. I would want the person that did this, get the ultimate punishment as well if that was my child. I get that.
Absolutely.
But,
Right.
part of the reason we have the legal system and the people in the legal system is they remove some of that emotion and passion from the law, right? The law should be looked at with neither passion nor prejudice. Here's the law. Here's the facts. Apply it. Yes. Is this a case that is worthy of a death penalty? Absolutely. And the prosecution said, but you know what? I'd rather have certainty. And I think at some point, Mr. Gonzalez will appreciate the fact 20 years from now, he's not getting a letter from the district attorney's office saying they filed a new motion for post-conviction relief or habeas corpus. And they're starting a whole new round of appellate proceedings. I think he will ultimately appreciate that. He may not now, but he will in the future. And I know I've had cases reversed where the DAs have told me, like, the family is they thought it was over. They didn't understand that it was going to go up on appeal and it gets reversed and there's going to be another trial. And we were able, lots of times be like, oh, okay. How about we do a plea to this so we don't have to have another trial because, we could win next time around. And you got to, trying to round up all these people and witnesses. Maybe they pass away, move away. It's difficult. So I understand his pain. I understand his anger. I'm not going to say that I know what he's going through. I don't, but I've seen it before. Right. And I think as time goes on, he will appreciate the fact when he gets to hear Bryan Kohberger admit, right? Because if he goes to trial, he's not going to admit to anything. And tomorrow at 11 a.m., when Judge Hippler starts asking him questions like, what did you do? Are you guilty? It will have some impact, I think, for the family.
Yeah.
He's confessing.
I agree. I know that's the one thing, yesterday when I was at work, and I still work at WSU, but in a different department, and we learned this, we're all locals. We've wanted him caught from the beginning. We followed it, and we were all like, at first, really angry. And then after I heard, these explanations, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I understand now. And as you said, I'm not in Steve's position. If it were my kids, same thing. I think we would all react. I mean, we don't know how everyone reacts. Everyone reacts differently. But after I heard the explanation, I was like, okay, if this is certainty, that's better. And I think as human beings, we don't like living in a state of uncertainty. We want things to be closed, right?
Yep. Everybody loves certainty,
and so,
right? Stock markets love
absolutely.
Certainty. Defendants love certainty. Prosecutors like certainty. People want certainty in their life. Uncertainty causes stress. Uncertainty causes angst. I know. I'm constantly dealing with uncertainty. So, I don't think the prosecutors took this lightly, but at the end of the day, it's their decision. And I think what their biggest concern was that, they're not concerned about getting a guilty verdict. I think they thought they had sufficient evidence, and apparently so did the defense. Let's be truthful about it. But I think what they worried about was we go through all of this and all it takes is one juror to say life. And that's what he gets.
Right.
And so,
hey, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a great night.
And you too. Thanks, Scott.
Who else we got, Frank? Daniel, you're up.
Hello, Scott.
How are you?
From California.
Great. What's on your mind?
So my final thought for the Kohberger case, because you followed it so closely and you've dissected so many angles. I really appreciate that. But to know that he will not face the death penalty, it kind of it's a mixed emotional thing because we want the justice for the victims, especially in the brutal manner in which they were taken.
Yeah.
And you've done a really good job of sort of illustrating that on your show. But I kind of see it as a double-edged sword. He won't be punished immediately for his crime, but he will have to spend the rest of his life knowing that he committed a crime, and he has to, and the reasons and the for his actions were, I don't know how he could have reasoned such a betrayal of trust in the public, because he was studying criminology.
Yeah.
And so it really, in my mind, I don't know how he'll be able to live with, himself, even as he's incarcerated, with what he's done.
Well, one of the things I think the family can take from this is every morning for the rest of his life, whether he goes another 40 years or 30 years, or he gets shanked, shivved by another inmate within the next couple of months. During that time, he's going to have to wake up in the same, excuse my French, shitty place over and over and over again and say, this is as good as it gets. This is his life. And so that should bring some, hopefully not glee. I don't want to, maybe that's not the right word, but some satisfaction to the victim's family.
Glee probably it's not a gleeful resolution. It's just, the law is the law, and the courts, are going to handle the law the way that the courts do, and it's never going to be satisfaction for everyone. But I also have another question regarding the female client you had with the $1 million
yes.
retainer.
The retainer is $1 million.
I'm assuming she doesn't qualify for your dumb criminal of the day, but usually people with a lot of means and a lot of resources, they can afford to disrespect their representatives and a lawyer or take things like that for granted.
Yeah, they can, but don't get me wrong. Sometimes a court-appointed client can be just as indignant as the high-paying ones. I assure you of that. Frankly, sometimes even more entitled because they're not paying the bill, right? Normally, the high expensive, like I think I've told this before, where I walked a guy in a homicide case a couple of years ago, and I think I told the story today. It's all true. I can show the paperwork. Not guilty, murder, and literally get the final bill to the client. Client knows I'm going on a trip. Hadn't been on a trip in a while. The lovely Miss Kristen and I were going on a cruise in the Mediterranean. It was going to be perfect. And he calls up and says, I know you're going on a trip, but I want to talk to you about your bill. Your bill, I think you spent a little too much time preparing. So we can talk about that. And I said, no, there's nothing to talk about. That's my bill. Let's find a bill. Pay it or I'm going to sue you. Because I'd had enough of him, because he tried to, he literally tried to screw everything up along the way. Thank God I saved him from himself. Anyway, he ultimately, a friend of mine sued him. I got paid plus interest because my fees were more than reasonable. But, I was like, well, because I told him, I said, if I hadn't prepared so much, you'd be saying that I didn't prepare enough and I was ineffective, and you still want your money back. So it doesn't play that way. So I'm going to sue you. And I won. So, and he paid me too.
Yeah, that's good that he was able to honor his contract, especially since it started with him. So yeah, he's the one that started. I'm not the one that brought us together. He did. Well, thanks for everything you do, Scott. And I believe the Constitution matters, and I hope you and the lovely Miss Christian have a lovely summer. Take care. All right. Thank you very much. I'll let her know. Good call. Who else we got? Frank? Terry. Go ahead. Terry, you're on.
Hi, Scott. I want to tell you that my husband and I totally enjoy your show. We can't wait for you to hold the K-bar knife up. My husband said tonight he's going to wear that knife out. Anyway, we look forward to that.
Look at how soft this K-bar sheath is. That thing is worn. It's soft.
That's what my husband says. Every time you hold it up, he's like, look at that.
Yeah.
It's worn well.
37 years
We all-
old, and I didn't lose
Really?
it. Bryan Kohberger, I've said it
That's
before.
amazing.
Loser. He never would have hacked it in the
Yeah.
military, because if you can't keep track of your gear, failure to pay attention to detail demonstrates an inability to accept larger responsibility. I remember that my drill instructors drilled that into my head. I will remember that forever.
Well, I personally, we're okay with this plea deal. We think it saves a lot of a lot of grief for the families as years go on. One of the things that I was thinking about today, when BTK had his plea agreement, they had him discuss what he had done. And it was like I think it was part of the plea agreement. What I didn't, at first I thought I would like that. So I was, watching him. I didn't like it in the end because he was trying to make himself part of the law enforcement team. And you could see him kind of get puffed up when he was talking about these killings. But what I would really like is if the judge could lean on Kohberger a little bit and say, where did you put the murder weapon? And I don't know how he'd ever get this out of him, but I would still like to know how he got out so clean without any blood anywhere. What do you think
like
about
I said,
that?
I hope the judge says, tell me in your own words what you did, right? The elements are, on this date, November 22 of or November 13th of 2022, on about that date, you, after deliberation, unlawfully took the life of, and then name all the 4 victims, right? Go through them one by one. What did you do to admit that you're guilty of that? And say, and after you left there, where did you go? Well, I went home, right? And what did you do? The judge could kind of get that out of him. I hope the judge does. Now, is that normal in most pleas? No, but it depends on the judge. In, federal court, you got sometime I had one the other day that we had through, I think it was like 48 page of a factual basis to lay out sufficient facts that, the government says, we believe we could prove this at trial. And then the defense says, yeah, we agree. And that's why we're pleading guilty. So I hope the judge does do that. And whether that takes place in court tomorrow or whether after the sentencing is done, I think we're going to learn more information. And whether that comes from Mr. Kohberger himself or through people that have made representations or talked to him, like law enforcement or something. We're going to get more information as to why. We still don't know why them, right?
Oh.
So,
right. The other question or thought process I have, I live in Florida, so they've been talking about how long it takes to proceed through to the death penalty. And they were saying this evening that it doesn't take 30 years here, that I don't know if this is true. I'm listening to the news media. They said that, here they push it through in 8 to 10 years. Is Idaho, is it exceedingly long in Idaho? I hear all these people saying it would be 30 years before he was executed.
Yeah. And that's kind of the average on a death penalty case. I think there's some death penalty cases or death sentences that were imposed recently. I think it was Mississippi or South Carolina or something. But, these guys committed their crimes in the, late 80s, 90s. So we're talking 30, 40 years. The average is about 30 years. And so it's not uncommon. I know Texas is maybe streamlined a little bit. They have like their own separate court of appeals just for that. Colorado used to have it where they would say, okay, you got convicted, you got the death penalty. Now, before we go up on appeal, we're going to appoint new attorneys to raise any issues of ineffective assistance to counsel so we can address them all at one appeal so we don't have to, take years. But of course that takes years because the new counsel has to get up to speed and then they're busy and then they got to look at records and and I'm telling you, by the time they get the appeal, to the first level, to the Court of Appeals, it's 5 years and then go to Supreme Court and then they're going to appeal that. And then they're going to say, oh, well, my new attorneys were ineffective. And then they're going to go to the federal system and, to have to exhaust all their remedies to get there. So it takes time. And just like the motion to continue that was basically frivolous and the judge called them on it, that's what takes place in a lot of death penalty litigation. Delay, delay, delay. Because if it's delayed and no decisions are made, guess what? Their client's not dead. It's that simple.
So I understand here, and I don't know, I don't know how much, I'm sure you know a lot more about Florida law than I do, but they've had a change in law that now they only have to have 6 people to convict.
Yeah, I don't think that's a smart idea. Supreme Court's already addressed that in Louisiana, which was like non-unanimous verdicts. Supreme Court kind of went away from that. I don't agree with that. I think or Supreme Court's basically said, I think it was Louisiana that said you didn't need, unanimous verdicts. And then the question was, well, do we have to redo all those murder convictions? So yeah, I don't believe that's a good idea at all. 12 is the presumptive criminal jury for a felony case, and it's got to be unanimous. I just believe that's true.
Okay. Well, thank you. And as said, we really enjoy your show. And what we're going to miss when this Kohberger thing's all over
Well,
is
keep
not
watching.
seeing your
We'll
table
find other cases to talk about.
There
Yeah,
you go.
We got the
Thanks,
one Barry
Scott.
Morphew just around the road. Let's see here. Thanks
And
for
we
the call.
love how you adore. We love how you adore the lovely Miss Kristen.
Well, thank you.
It's
She's
amazing to hear a man. That's awesome. Okay, have a good evening.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right, quick super chat here. We don't ask or beg for super chats, but it does highlight. It caught my eye as we were going by here. So Carly wants to know if BK needs to be in field control and pulling this last minute plea deal after the ish hit the fan after 2 years. He knew this would shock the families. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, listen, I'm just going to say it like it is. All right. Here it is. Bryan Kohberger's a little bitch. Okay. Little bitch. I don't know if that's going to get us demonetized or what, but he's a little bitch. Like I said, if this guy was going to truly say I was innocent, he would have gone to trial within that first speedy trial. He wouldn't have dragged it out. Okay. And now he goes groveling to the prosecution. May I please plead guilty to all counts in exchange for the death taken off the table, right? Remember, every motion the defense filed, the prosecution didn't turn the piece of paper over. I want us to sanction removal of the death penalty. That's what they asked for. This was never about winning the case. And I hate to break it to you, ladies and gentlemen, it was never about winning the case. It was only about keeping death off the table. So, yes, he's a little bitch. He went groveling. He's afraid to die. But he didn't show any mercy to those 4 victims when he took their life back there in November of 2022. So, yeah, frankly, nothing would probably make a lot of people happier if he gets up there and tries to be coy and he blows the plea up. It ain't over until the judge finds that it's a knowing voluntary plea where he's aware of his rights, understood the possible penalties, is satisfied with his attorneys, et cetera, for the judge to do it. The judge could say, I'm not taking your plea if you're not going to tell me what happened. I'm going to take your plea if, this isn't a knowing voluntary plea. We'll see you in trial in 3 weeks. Seriously, I've seen pleas like that blow up. It's not over until the judge accepts the plea. And if somebody gets cute and thinks they're going to be funny, he better have some humble freaking pie there tomorrow. Yes, Your Honor. I did it, Your Honor. I plead guilty, Your Honor. Let me tell you how I did it, Your Honor. And more importantly, why. That's what the world needs to know. All right. Thanks for the super chat there, Carly. All right. Do we have any more calls, Frank?
Yeah, last one. Yeah.
All right. Last call. We got to go do our Patreon show. If you'd like to continue the Patreon, continue the conversation, join us on our Patreon show. I'm so sorry that Franklin wasn't there. Maybe tomorrow. All right. Miranda, was it? Go ahead.
Hello?
Yep.
Hi. First thing, I love your channel. You're the only channel I watch on this case.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for always keeping us updated. So I just have I won't take too much of your time. I just have a few comments actually. Don't you think that they kind of let him off easy with the plea? Like he's like him and his team kind of fought so hard to get the death penalty off of the table. And don't you think the prosecution should have at least given him a bargain? Like, hey, you know what? If you give us the location where the murder weapon is, then we'll take death penalty off the table.
Listen, we don't know what's taken place. It very well may have information may have been turned over. We don't know yet for sure.
Okay.
I can tell you, I had a
So
case
then
once.
Maybe they got something out of him that they actually gave in for the death penalty to come out.
I mean, these prosecutors, they're not idiots. Hopefully, if they didn't get any of that information, then, that they can share with the family and the world afterwards, and maybe they are, but I don't think they are. I think we'll find out. But, the important thing is he's pleading guilty straight up to everything. Right.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
he was the
I
one
feel
that
like
fought
also-
it. And he made the conclusion that this is not a good thing. I will probably be convicted.
No one was on his side. Nobody wanted to be on his defense, testifying for him.
Yeah.
So
he realized the gig
and I
was
also
up
feel-
and he cutting his losses.
I also feel like if he admitted where the weapon is and where he hid it, then the Kohbergers will they'll have nothing to say, because hey, you know what? He knew where the murder weapon is, so he did it. Like they will have nothing to say after that. And then I feel like that will be a good comeback for them, because they have put so many videos out there. I've seen so many stuff that they have been talking about, like saying stuff about the roommates, how they did it, how they feel like they're the ones who did it. I'm sure that the police searched their phones. I'm sure that the police, I know that maybe they had Apple Watches, like they're college girls. Everyone has that kind of stuff. Maybe they traced their steps, where they were going. Like I'm sure that they would have been under the scope if they knew that they had a slight chance of being involved, and they weren't. You know what I mean?
Those girls have been vindicated. Those roommates have been completely vindicated. The people that ran their names through the mud and accused them of being involved and should have been arrested for not calling the police. I mean, those people should be ashamed of themselves. They really should. Because
I agree.
we've been doing this for a while now, but we don't go around randomly accusing people of committing crimes. We may say that story doesn't make sense, or we can try to say, hey, this is why we do it.
Yeah, there's no evidence. The only evidence, okay, what if they did call at 4 a.m.? What then? Then they have nothing to say. Like, what about all the evidence that they have against Bryan Kohberger? They'll have nothing to say. Okay, they called right after it happened, and then this wouldn't have happened, right? But they were scared. They didn't. Maybe their mind even blocked it out, because sometimes that happens. Whenever you see something traumatic, your mind protects you and it blocks it out.
It doesn't. And the thing is, it doesn't matter why they did it or whatever. They had no involvement.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was going on. There's kind of a party house. Somebody's in there. They've been drinking. No dispute about that. That affects your ability to kind of perceive and recollect what's going on. But the reality of it is, she knows she saw somebody standing in the hallway, right? And the general description.
I'm sure that he was trying to get out of there. Like, I'm sure he did not see her. Like, if he did see her, she would have been gone too. And she's a victim just as the other girls too. Yeah.
So all those people that badmouthed and said those girls were part of a conspiracy to, commit the crime, and trying to throw 4 people under the bus because they were alleged alternate suspect, but the judge said is complete fantasy. It was a Hail Mary attempt, and they knew it. And they went to Kohberger and they said, hey, we can't do this unless you give us authority to do so. We pulled out everything. We've loaded, we shot everything we've got. We think it's now is the time to go ask for a plea bargain. Okay. And they're not going to let him plead guilty to life without parole, on 4 cases if he didn't admit to them that he did it. And tomorrow he's going to admit to the rest of the world that he did it. So all the people that were ridiculous about, oh, there's not enough DNA. They don't know what they're talking about. It's touch DNA. That doesn't mean anything. The 2 roommates, there was DNA outside the house. Well, you can find DNA outside my house too. The mailman walks by.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean the mailman, stole my dog. I mean, whatever, or stole my bike. It doesn't matter. It's just ridiculous. And, it's a homicide scene. I'm telling you, weird stuff happens, and you're not always going to be explaining exactly how that happens. And I think the greatest example is that Air India crash, right? What is it? 186 people die. 1 guy survives. Nobody can figure out how he survived other than the grace of God, right?
Exactly. He went through all of it too, like that.
And think about it.
Right.
You think they're ever going to be able to recreate that accident to say this guy survives and everybody else dies? The people to his left die, the people to his right, front and back all die, and he survives? No, they're never going to be able to explain it. But by some people's logic in the world, well, I'm not even sure that there was a crash. I'm not even sure the plane crashed and blew up and killed the other 168 people.
Yeah, people will speculate for anything.
It's crazy.
Create a conspiracy about anything. And one more thing I want to add.
Go ahead, and then we got to go.
Do you think that after everything happens, will we find out what evidence that they have against him, or will they keep all that under seal?
It should be released through some sort of public.
I'm sure that that we don't even know half of, what they know. Maybe that's why he even wanted to have a plea deal, because he knows that they have so much against him.
Yeah, well, I think they said at one point there was 32 terabytes. That's a lot of video, but 98% of it is completely irrelevant because, that's what I think. They dump all this evidence because they have to, because it's everything they looked at to be thorough. But really what it boils down to is, this. We got a homicide trial in a couple of weeks. The discovery is huge, but it comes down to this, 28 seconds of video. That's it. That's the only thing that matters.
I'm sure the breaking point was him not having anybody on his side when the defense tried to get some people to testify against him.
No, those people didn't want to testify, but they would have been forced to testify. You get witnesses in cases all the time that don't want to testify.
Exactly. They did not want to testify.
But they have to.
They don't want to lose their job and stuff like that.
Yeah, but they don't have to.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I'll let you go. I know that you've had a long night, and I love your show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you. All right, everybody. We had the one little super chat that was up there about, could this plea deal? No, he's going to plead guilty tomorrow. Question. Anyway, this can still lead death penalty. Question. No. Offer valid for X days. Nope. Judge denies. Prosecution rescinds. Not going to happen. The only way this plea doesn't go through tomorrow is if Bryan Kohberger won't admit, or he gets cute, like I enter a plea of no contest or something like that. Then the judge can reject the plea and we'll go to trial in 3 weeks. Part of me kind of hopes that happens, but I don't think it will. I think he's going to go in there, eat a little humble pie, and hopefully, start the process of acceptance of responsibility. And hopefully it'll bring some peace to the victim's family, and it'll bring finality and certainty in this particular case. And all the conspiracy people can go about their ways and go troll for the next one. I think that's the biggest thing. Like I said, we try to call the facts the way we see it, the where it is. And I know people are like, oh, Scott, you were wrong, Karen Reed. You're right. I thought she was going to get convicted. I mean, the jury was like, well, we can't really dispute that she was drunk that night and she was driving that night. Oh, yeah. And that whole data. I get it. But they found her not guilty. I wish her well. She'll be back. Or she'll have a probation revocation. No doubt in my mind. She's not used to taking orders from people that, she thinks she's superior to. So we'll leave it at that. Okay. But some of these grifters, I mean, and that's the thing. And I'm not saying you have to follow these cases or anything like that, but you know what? Some of these people have never tried a criminal case in their life, and acting like they're the biggest experts on the planet. It just completely blows my mind. Okay. If there was a civil securities fraud case, I wouldn't be commenting on it because that's not really my forte. I generally hear it is, but I'm not going to go out there and try to hold myself as an expert. And there are a lot of grifters. I literally saw on X last night, people were literally like, oh, we are really psyched up for the Kohberger case. I guess that's going away. I guess we'll have to find something else to go on to. Total grifters. Anyway, it is what it is. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can become a Patreon member. We're going to do our Patreon show here in just a minute. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters. Right there. Look, the Constitution matters.